Hi guys, one of you guys requested a video about Hawkeye, so let's get started. So essentially you can make a somewhat good representation of Hawkeye using the Huntress mask, and I used the Sinestro gloves for this version. Pretty much everything else you can get at character creation, the quiver, the T slimline chest, the combat slimline pants, and the square buckle belt. It's all from character creation. There is a mask that you could use at character creation instead of the Huntress mask, but I much prefer the Huntress mask, and it's not that difficult to get it. Although I guess if you're free to play, that probably could be a problem. And obviously you need the clean cuffed boots for that style. Another mask that can be used that sort of screams Hawkeye is the Huntress mask, or I should say the Vengeance mask. Essentially, it's a PvP mask from PvP sets of gear that is inspired by the Huntress. So it's a fairly good mask to try and recreate our friend Hawkeye. And then this is where things get weird a bit. Essentially, Marvel created at some point the Ultimate Universe, and within that universe, they created the Ultimates, which was supposed to be a more realistic version of the Avengers, and they created obviously a more quote unquote realistic version of Hawkeye, and this is pretty much the result of that. And then when they made the movie version of Hawkeye, they decided to pretty much model him after the Ultimate version. They made a few tweaks, like the red became almost burgundy, and there were a few other tweaks, but more or less it pretty much became a copy of the Ultimates version, with a few tweaks here and there. And then at some point they decided to redesign the version in the comics, and they tried to make it more like the version in the movie. So they ended up with not quite something that was like the version in the Ultimates, but close enough. They came back with the glasses, and essentially they tweaked the colors a bit. But it was a strange case of the comic influencing the movie, influencing the comics. And then later on, they had much different versions in the Ultimates comics, which was nothing like the previous versions or any versions we had before. It had all the tropes from the 90s with a truckload of pouches and all that good stuff. And speaking of the 90s, at some point they made this weird alternate look with Hawkeye with those goggles, and they gave him some sort of some gloves that were not unlike the Iron Man armor, the same with some sort of boots in the similar style. It was their way to try to make him more extreme at the time, or something like that. Essentially, it was when in the 90s they were trying to recreate all the characters. And then, of course, we got a version with even more pouches later on that was even more extreme and more 90s, which is pretty much what it seems the Ultimates version with all the pouches tried to recreate, but with a few tweaks here and there. And then there was the version from the animated series, the Avengers from the 90s. There's no way to actually recreate the style itself, but to try to recreate the feel of the look, all you need is a style that's pretty much a jumble mess, and you pretty much end up with something that's pretty much looking like the TV version from the 90s. So as you saw, the 90s were not very kind to our friend Hawkeye. They tried to essentially reinvent him a few times, and they added a bunch of pouches. They got rid of the mask, or they tweaked the mask quite a bit. It wasn't a good time for poor little Hawkeye. Although at some point he pretty much came back to being looking like his normal self, but it took quite a while. And then with the Ultimates version and the movie version, the essentially the purple costume is pretty much gone, and the mask is definitely gone. Sadly, I don't think we'll ever see the classic Hawkeye ever again. But then again, ever again is a long time. Who knows? Maybe in the future, some future creator will decide to say, "Hey, let's bring back Hawkeye to his more classic look that looked all kinds of awesome." And I have to agree with that. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.